So you should have tried this problem on your own, and then if you got stuck, you can follow along with me here. So this is practice problem 5.1. My favorite hockey team is the Boston Bruins. The chart below shows data from the 2011 to 2012 regular season for players who were with the team for the entire season. So this is my chart. Question A, identify the individuals and the variables for this data set. So the individuals are going to be the players. And the variables, we've got two variables here, position and goals. Notice that position is not a quantitative variable, but goals is. Alright, so that is part A. Part B, we want to create a frequency distribution for the number of goals scored. So first I want to fill in all the values that I see in this chart, and then I'll count up how many times I see each value to fill in the frequency. So my first value, my smallest value here is 0, and I see a bunch of zeros. So I'll fill that in as my value. I'll go ahead and count and fill in the frequency also. See 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 10 zeros. I see a 1 is my next highest value here. And I only see 1, 1. So that's frequency is 1. I see a 2 for my next value. And again, I only see 1, 2. So that frequency is going to be 1. I don't see any 3s. I do see a 4, so my next value is 4. I only see 1 4, so its frequency is also 1. I see a few 5s, so my next value is 5, and I see 1, 2, 3 5s, so that's that frequency. I see 1 6, so the next value is 6, and it has a frequency of 1. I see a 7, it's also one of those. An 8, I have 1 8, I have 1 9, and that takes care of this column and this column. I've counted all the values there, so now I just have to look at this first column of goals. And I don't see any 10, so I'm going to skip 10. I do see an 11, so I have 1 11, so frequency of 1. I also see a 12, I have 1 12, no 13s, no 14s, and no 15s, but I do see a 16, I've got 1 16, I see a 17, and there is 1 17, no 18s or 19s, there's a 20, I have 1 20, no 21, but I do see a 22, so that will be my next value. And I've got one of those. I see a 23, and there's also one of those. No 24 or 25, but there is a 26, and there's 126. No 27, I see a 28, 128, and 129. So 29 is the highest number of goals that were scored, and that was Tyler Seguin up here in the top. So that fills in my frequency distribution chart. For part C, I want to create a relative frequency distribution for the number of goals scored, and I'm going to round to the nearest whole percent. So I've copied over my frequency distribution chart here, and I'll use it to fill in my relative frequency distribution chart below it. So remember, we're calculating percentages. Let's start out by looking at the relative frequency of 0. I have 10 players who scored 0 goals, so to get the percentage, that's going to be 10 individuals out of, there were 30 players in that chart, so 10 divided by 30 times 100, and rounding to the nearest percentage, that is 33%. So I fill that in my chart here. For the value 1, I have a frequency of 1, so to calculate that percentage, that is going to be 1 individual out of 30 times 100 is going to give me 3% if I round to the nearest whole percent. So I'll fill that in here. And notice that I have a whole lot of 1s up here. And for each box where I have a 1, it's going to be exactly the same calculation, 1 divided by 30 times 100. So everywhere I see a 1 in the top chart, I can fill in a 3% in the bottom chart. So I'll just go ahead and do that. For the value of 5, I have a 3, so I'm going to leave that blank for now and fill in all the rest of these. Everywhere else I see a 1, so I'll just fill in 3% for all of those. Alright, and once I've done that, I've only got one empty box to figure out. So for the value of 5, I've got a frequency of 3. So I have 3 individuals out of 30 times 100. It's going to give me exactly 10%. I don't even have to round on that one. So 10%. And if I want to check that these sum to around 100, I just add them up. So I've got 33 plus 10 plus I've got 17 copies of 3, and if I do that, I'm going to get 94% total. So that's a little far away from 100%, but we did a lot of rounding here because we rounded to the nearest whole percent, and there are 19 values that we rounded for here, so that's pretty good. Alright, next I'm going to create a grouped frequency distribution using the following intervals. So I've got intervals of 3 starting with 0 to 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 8, and all the way up to 27 to 29. And again, I have copied my frequency distribution chart here, and I'm going to use that to fill in this chart. So my first interval or class is 0 to 2, and that's going to include these values from the top chart here. So if I add that up, that is going to give me 12. For 3 to 5, that's going to include these values, and if I add those up, I will get 4. 6 to 8 includes these values, add those up, I get 3. 9 to 11 is these values, and that is 2. 12 to 14 only includes 12 because I didn't have any values for 13 or 14, so that's just going to be 1. 15 to 17 is going to be these 2, so 2. 18 to 20, again, is just going to be that 1. 21 to 23 is these values, which is 2. 24 to 26 is just the 26, so I'm going to have a 1 there. And finally, 27 to 29 is those values, so I have 2 in my last box there, and that fills in my grouped frequency distribution chart. So for the final part, we're going to use the grouped frequency distribution to create a histogram of the number of goals scored. So for each interval, I'm going to go down here on my chart and draw a bar that corresponds to my grouped frequency distribution. So for my interval from 0 to 2, I have a count of 12, so I'm going to draw a bar of height 12 here. And notice that my vertical axis here, oops, not quite straight, my vertical axis goes up a little bit higher than 12, just to make it nice and easy to see. For 3 to 5, I've got a count of 4, so I'll draw a bar of height 4 here. 6 to 8, I have a count of 3, so I draw a bar of height 3. 9 to 12, I have a count of 2, so I draw a bar of height 2. 12 to 14, I have a count of 1, so I draw a bar of height 1. 15 to 17, I've got 2 again. 18 to 20 is 1, 21 to 23 is 2, 24 to 26 is 1, and 27 to 29 is 2, and that's my last interval there. So this is what my histogram is going to look like, and here it is a little bit nicer with the computer drawing it and filling it in. So that finishes practice problem 5.1.